at the end of the day. So in this next topic, we're going to talk about how to make $10,000 a month driving your Tesla for Uber. I saw this post on Twitter and I just had to stop the scroll, and of course I had to share it with all of you because that's a good amount of money. Maybe it's, of course, maybe it's a full-time job instead of a side hustle, but even if you can make a fourth of that, a fifth of that, a tenth of that, like as a side hustle, you know, that intrigues me, especially when you combine it with a Tesla. If you've got free home charging or whatever, free supercharging, if you got old referral miles, it could make some sense. So we'll talk about it, and let me know what your thoughts on it, because driving for Uber has always been an interesting one, but I never thought you could make money at like $10,000 a month driving Uber. So we'll talk about it. But if you're just joining in, my name is Dennis. I love talking about Tesla hacking, as I like to call it, but basically just getting the best thing out of Tesla at the best financing rate. So definitely hit that subscribe if you're interested. So let us jump right into this. So shout out to Steve Sassman on Twitter. Anyone make 10,000 058, so more than $10,000 a month, 10,000 over $10,000 a month doing rideshare in the 4 weeks of March, a thread on how I did it. So of course he's got some screenshots here. You can see we've got a weekly breakdown from March 13th to March 19th, $3,365.70. Now of course there's a couple things to dissect into here, right? Like online time 64 hours, so of course that's more than a 40-hour work week. So if you factor in overtime, stuff like that. And if you look at book time, he essentially drove 49 hours of people in the car with them and over 141 people. So at a minimum, that's 141 different people, maybe most likely even more, because most people might take like rideshare with people or things like that. But at the end of the day, like no matter what, however you want to squeeze it, you can't deny that is a chunk amount of change. And essentially that's triple, maybe even more than that of probably his monthly payment for that vehicle. So if you factor out the miles, if you factor out his time, he's still paying for his payment in essentially 1 week of full-time work as well. So of course, and on top of that, because if you're an Uber driver, you're a 1099 contractor, your own business, you can write off all these miles, or that even potentially that car or other things like that, because you're your own business, and maybe even cell phone plan, things like that. And so you can take a look at here. He actually posted his charge stats as well, and he went to a supercharger and spent a total amount of $217. You can see 1,721 kilowatts. So I mean, that's not, of course, not as bad as a gas bill, depending on how much he actually drove, like a gasoline bill, but still a good amount of money at superchargers. So taking a look at some of like the different thread here and notes, like it's pretty interesting to see that someone could potentially make, like if they've got the right setup, if they got the right car, because that might not be as profitable, I guess. If he had gasoline car, maybe he'd be spending $400 to $500 a month in gas, and if he had to pay like oil changes, maintenance, brake changes, that can all essentially eat into the profit at the end of the day. So of course, on top of that, this was in the peak season of Phoenix. Maybe there was a bunch of things going on during that time. I know there's like a golf tournament in Phoenix at the time. I don't even know at the same time or something like that. But at the end of the day, definitely some pretty interesting stuff to be able to make $10,000 a month or $3,300 a week on rideshare for driving with Uber using your Tesla. Of course, you could probably replicate this with a different type of car, but of course, it's more profitable at the end of the day using a Tesla. But let me know what your thoughts on this. I mean, it definitely is pretty interesting. And if you used it with like a Model X or a bigger car, of course, your expenses are a lot higher, but then of course, the vehicle has more tax advantages because it's heavier and all that different stuff. But of course, talk to an accountant at the end of the day. So it could be an interesting use case here, right? Like how fast could you pay off a Tesla? Like if you bought a $55,000 Model Y, you got the $7,500 federal tax credit, you worked like, I don't know, 1 week or 2 weeks a month on your extra time, or maybe even weekends. Could that be enough to pay for a Tesla payment? I mean, essentially, I definitely think it could with a Model 3, because Model 3 is basically a starting point with the $7,500 federal tax rate is like $35,000 plus like CVRP for California, different state rebates, New Jersey, $4,000. It can definitely get pretty interesting very, very quickly. But shout out to Steve Sassman. I love the hustle. I love the effort, and I love how the transparency of how he actually posted the screenshots and tried to show everyone else and try and inspire people that there's different ways. If you want a Tesla, if there's a will, there is certainly a way to get a Tesla. So definitely some pretty interesting stuff. We're going to jump into our next topic, and of course the live stream comments, because that's the benefit and I answer all the questions. But before we do that, this video is sponsored by my Patreon link. Down in the description is the Patreon link where you can support the channel, so definitely check it out if you are interested. But if you're just joining in, welcome. Tesla has